Hey guys, my name is Danish and welcome back to my channel, and today we are going to talk about the Austrian Grand Prix. So this is on the coattails of the Styrian Grand Prix, which was last week and which was a bit boring, but boy oh boy was this weekend interesting. So without further ado, let's just get started. Now the first biggest change that we got for this weekend was the tires going one step softer. So we got the C5, C4 and C3, the softest set, where we had the C4s, the C3 and the C2 last time. So we had the software set of tires and a lot lower temperatures in terms of track temperature, which does help in degradation and wear on the tires. So it was a new ballpark to look at and enjoy. So the practices were normal, spins, everything out, not something out of the ordinary, but qualifying is where things changed. We got Kimi Raikkonen P16, Ocon P17, Latifi P18, Mick Schumacher P19 and Nikita Mazepin P20. Now Q2 was an interesting session because a lot of the runners who were going on the softs were actually going to be on a disadvantage because the softs were not a good race start tire, and it was always going to be the mediums and the hards. Even if it is a two-stop strategy, it was a medium hard, or if it is a one stop, it was the medium to the hard, or if they did the inverse with a free tire choice, they would go from a hard to the mediums in the end. So the softs were never in the equation to be in the fastest timing for the race. So the people running on the softs were just doing for track position. And Q2 was interesting because the end of Q2 we got Sainz and Leclerc in P11 and P12, Daniel Ricciardo P13, Alonso P14 and Giovinazzi P15. And here is the kicker, was that Sebastian Vettel impeded Alonso's qualifying run because there was traffic ahead of him, and when he moved out, Alonso was ending his lap and he had no place to go, so he was going to come with a grid penalty for himself over there. And Alonso said in the post qualifying interview that their race is officially over and they're gonna be suffering this weekend and not score any points, and if any it will be for last place. So it was already a step down for them, and whatever penalty he was getting was not gonna be worth it for Alonso. And also I forgot to tell you this, Russell was P10 in Q2, so he came into the top 10 and came for the first time into Q3 in his career in a Williams. He came in a Mercedes in Bahrain, but that doesn't count because that was just a substitute. This is his team, this is where he went. And at the end of Q3 we had Verstappen P1, Norris P2, Perez P3, Mercedes P4 and P5 in terms of Hamilton and Bottas, 2 spots below Lando Norris, who is a Mercedes customer team driver and not the Mercedes Works team. So this was a bit of a blow for Mercedes because their customer team outshone them and outqualified them. So Gasly came P6, Tsunoda a good showing in P7, Vettel P8 with a pending penalty coming his way, Russell P9 and Stroll P10. Russell outqualified an Aston Martin. Even though both of them have the same engine, the aero packages is completely different, and the Williams was always on the back foot for a few years. So Russell overtaking an Aston Martin, which was basically the development of the 2020 Racing Point, which was a copy of the 2019 race winning Mercedes. So it's not a bad aero platform, they just couldn't utilize it as much. But yeah, Russell outshining an Aston was a bit of a bittersweet moment because Russell is in P9, woohoo, but Aston suffering. So we come on to the race start, and Russell starts out in P8 because Vettel got a penalty, 3-place grid penalty for impeding Alonso, so he came and started in P11, splitting the two Ferraris. In between him and the Ferraris had free tire choice and he did not. So it was a mix-up and lap 1 was not good. And it's been a while since we have got a lap 1 racing incident, but this was at turn 3. All the leaders started out clearly, nicely, and then in the midfield, Ocon got squeezed by Gio, and I think it was Mick, and he lost his front right suspension and it just broke it. The tire folded inwards and he had to stop the car at the end of this race, and a safety car came out. So this helped a lot of the soft runners extend a bit of their lap, and even the medium runners who it was a teeter-totter between a 2-stop or a 1-stop and saving tires. So this 3-lap safety car really helped all the medium runners to convert their strategy into a single stop strategy to run longer into the race on the mediums, and then do the whole final stint on one set of hards, which is actually the quickest time because because you're saving another 21 seconds that you're not going to use in the pits. So safety car ends on lap 3, and after the safety car came out, there was a lunge from Perez on Norris, and Norris came out wide and the Perez went off the track and he came back out P10. Now this was probably a racing incident, but the stewards thought otherwise and they gave Lando Norris a 5-second pit stop penalty, and this sort of set out the trend for the rest of the race, because after this is where things got interesting, and there was not a dull moment in this race like the previous few races. There was a lot of excitement because there was a lot of overtakes in the midfield and in the top as well. There were fights between Perez and Latifi, and another penalty was for Antonio Giovinazzi for overtaking under the safety car. So there is a safety car line right before the start finish straight where you have to cross it before you can overtake somebody. As soon as the green flags are shown, you can't overtake before that safety car line, and Gio did, and he got a 5-second penalty for that. And then from lap 13 to lap 18 where the soft runners pit for the first time, and then lap 20 is where Norris got his penalty for Perez, and lap 20 is where Hamilton overtakes Norris, and it was a real scrap for 20 laps between Hamilton and Norris because he was always in DRS range and always around 0.35 seconds behind him at the end of the straight, but just couldn't get it. But he pounced in turn 3, made him defend, and he did the move in turn 4, and it was great, and Hamilton was finally in free air. But by the time Hamilton was in free air by lap 20, Verstappen had a 10-second lead already built up when Norris was over there, and probably being the bottleneck for Hamilton because Mercedes has a bit more pace in the race than qualifying. So Verstappen was just off 10 seconds in the lead in 20 laps. Nobody to catch him, nobody competing him. He was just flying through the Red Bull ring. And then another penalty coming up was for Yuki Tsunoda, who crossed the pit lane entry white line because only you can come through into that and not go out of that when you're pitting. So he got a penalty, 5-second penalty for that. And then from around lap 30 was where the medium started pitting for their first stop. So Russell pit on lap 32. I'm counting Russell because he's one of the top runners this weekend because he was in P9 for a lot of the part. And then Lewis pits on lap 32, Max pits on lap 33, Perez pits on lap 33 again, Ferrari Leclerc pits on lap 35, and also Norris pit on lap 31, and Bottas pit right behind him because Norris and Bottas were fighting for position and Norris had the penalty. So the moment Norris entered, Bottas entered right behind him. Norris had the 5-second penalty, Bottas got out ahead. Free overtake for Bottas. Not a lot of effort needed for him because of the time penalty for Norris, but this isn't the end of time penalties for the top drivers. So let's just continue on with the race. So it was a lot of mid-tier fighting between Gasly, Ricciardo, Perez, Leclerc. They were just DRS train for around 20 laps over there, and it was pretty exciting because it wasn't just 2 cars fighting for a position, it was 3 cars chasing 1 car without DRS. So it was a really interesting mix of fights, and Alonso and Raikkonen also were fighting, and it was a pretty mixed bag because there were fights going on all over the tracks, because there were fights going on over there with the leaders, with the midfield, with the back of the pack, with Latifi and Mick. And then on lap 43 was where it started tumbling down for Perez, because whatever happened with Lando Norris with Perez in the previous incident, and Perez was pushed out wide into the gravel, Perez did the same thing to Leclerc. So this was a penalty coming because just for consistency reasons they had to give that, because they gave it to Norris, now they have to give it for Perez, and Perez got a 5-second penalty for pushing him off. And then again after 4 laps, Perez did the same thing but on a different corner. Instead of turn 4, it was turn 6, and Perez pushed him off again, and Leclerc lost again a bunch of time to Perez, and Perez got the second penalty because of the same incident twice. Damn. And then Lewis was losing pace at around lap 50, and we got towards floor damage for Lewis, and he was losing half a second every lap. So Bottas was finally allowed to race Lewis and overtake Lewis, and this was a strategic call. They had to do that. Lewis would still be the bottleneck, and Lando Norris was coming up chasing behind, and he would have overtaken both of them when the chance came. So Bottas got ahead and went in the front, and Norris did overtake Hamilton because Hamilton did not have the pace with a broken car. So let's continue on with the lap 50 shenanigans, because on lap 54 Lance Stroll gets a 5-second penalty for speeding in the pit lane. Now this is not the last penalty that is coming in the race, because Yuki Tsunoda got another penalty for again crossing the white pit lane entry line again for his second stop, which was on lap 58, and Russell was P10 in the mix of the midfield and in the points, but there was a charging Alonso right behind who was coming up and chasing him down. And Alonso also said in the interview that when he was chasing the P10 driver down, he saw it as Russell and he wished it wasn't Russell, because a point is a point, and when you have the pace you have to overtake. You can't just dole out sympathy and not overtake the person in front of of you. So finally Perez got out of the DRS chain and overtook Daniel Ricciardo and started building up a bit of a pace, but they had to do only one thing, that was Perez had to make out a 10-second gap behind him because he had a 10-second penalty coming up his way, and it was Daniel Ricciardo was in that mix, Sainz was in that mix, Leclerc was in that mix, and it was potentially, if Danny Rick had a bit more pace, it could have been 3 places, but Danny Rick did not have the pace and he started dropping, and they did and in the midst of all this, Lewis pit a second time because of a safe stop because nobody was behind him chasing, and then Verstappen also did a pit for another set of hearts on lap 60 because it was a stop for him as well, and he started putting in laps for the fastest lap as well to steal that point away from what Hamilton had gone from his previous final second pit stop, and he got it. It was about 3 seconds faster than the pace that was currently running on the track, so it was definitely going to be Verstappen's point at the end of the race as well because nobody else had the pace that the Red Bulls had. And then we got a lot of scrap from Alonso and Russell, and they were fighting wheel to wheel and giving each other space, and this was where the commentators were also like, Perez needs to learn from these two on how to race wheel to wheel, and the only thing that came to mind was Alonso's quote in my mind, you always have to leave the room, you should make sure to leave the room. So yeah, that was floating in my mind, and it was just making me chuckle whenever I saw Perez trying to overtake somebody and fighting through and pushing people off, and it was a bit of a weird race for Perez, and yeah, I just think he would like to forget how this race is ending for him. And there are other fights like Ricciardo, Leclerc and Sainz were fighting, Bottas and Norris were fighting, and then Sainz and Leclerc swapped places because Leclerc was on fresher tires, Sainz was on fresher tires, and he finally did get an overtake on Danny Rick. And also the heartbreaking moment for the race was Alonso overtaking Russell on lap 69. Nice, but it wasn't that nice for Russell because he was this close to the points and he was really fighting for contention, but he came out P11 this time. Hopefully they have a bit of a better experience in the next track with the Silverstone coming in 2 weeks time, which is going to be an interesting mix because home track for Mercedes. Who will dominate the race, Red Bull or Mercedes? We have to wait and watch for that. And then finally Perez was around 9 seconds ahead of Sainz, so after the penalties was applied, Sainz came up 1 place and Perez came down 1, and then on the final lap we had a collision between Kimi and Vettel. Kimi was fighting with Vettel along with, I think it was Russell as well, and Kimi just went out wide and Vettel came in, and Kimi just put a bit of a right steering wheel and they touched tires and both of them went out of the race. And this was a last lap incident and Kimi is definitely at fault over here, and the thing about penalty that he might get will probably be for the next race because they have to be punished, and because of the consistency that they have done for just for pushing somebody off the track and gave them a 5-second penalty, causing a collision and taking another car off the track is a bit more serious offense, so there will be a penalty coming for Kimi in next few days. And the race results were Max Verstappen first, Bottas second, Norris third, another podium for Lando Norris, and the podium was an interesting one because Bottas did not want to be there. He was like, let's just throw the champagne out and let me get out of here, I don't want to be on this podium because yeah, his contract is ending again and there hasn't been an update, and Toto had said that they would take until the end of the summer break to decide who will be the second driver, and Lewis had just signed his 2-year extension contract right before the race, so that was also another newsworthy topic over here. So the rumors again started flying up because it was either Russell or Bottas because Ocon has already signed for Alpine, so Russell or Bottas, Russell or Bottas, Russell or Bottas. All the pundits, commentators, everybody on social media is looking at that equation right now, and hopefully we'll get a clear answer about that in a month or two. So let's just hope whoever stays is gonna give a stiff competition to Lewis, and Lewis came out 4th. Sainz took P5 from Perez after providing the penalty, Perez P6, Danny P7 showed good race pace, Charles Leclerc P8, Pierre Gasly P9 and Fernando Alonso P10. So Pierre Gasly is the only one of the soft tire runners who started on the soft tire to come into the P10 top 10, and all the other racers who started on the softs did not get into the top 10. And George Russell was P11, Yuki P12, Lance P13, Antonio P14, Latifi P15. Kimi and Vettel are qualified as 16 and 17 because they were on the last lap and they were already a lap behind, so they do qualify because they have covered 90% of the race distance. Mick Schumacher and Nikita Mazepin were 2 laps down, and Esteban Ocon was a DNF, and all the people all the way up till P10, which was Fernando Alonso were lapped, and if Max Verstappen hadn't done his second pit stop, it would be a lot more higher. I think it would be all the way up till P6 or P5 would have been lapped like last weekend, and only the top 4 runners would be the remaining ones on the lead lap. So yeah, this was an interesting race weekend for Red Bull and Mercedes, because Red Bull obviously had a flawless race with Max and a bit of a flawed race with Perez, and also with Yuki Tsunoda with 2 penalties in AlphaTauri sister team. It's going to be a bit of a hard bullet to bite, and the top driver standings is Max 1, Lewis 2, now around 32 points behind him. That's more than a race victory and another 3rd place finish. And then Sergio Perez P3, Lando Norris P4, Valtteri P5. He needs to catch up and be there in the top 4. Charles and Sainz fighting right behind them. Daniel Ricciardo catching up nicely. Gasly and Vettel are the final 2 in the top 10, and Fernando P11, Lance and Esteban 12 and 13, Yuki P14, Kimi and Gio on 1 point in 15 and 16, and then George, Mick, Nikita and Latifi at the bottom with 0 points. The team constructors you already know: Red Bull 1, Mercedes 2, McLaren 3, Ferrari 4, Alpha 5, Aston 6, Alpine 7, Alpha 8, Williamson has 0. So that was the race weekend, and the race weekend did not stop there, because we got news that we have Latifi, Leclerc, Sainz, Mazepin, Gio, Daniel Ricciardo, Gasly and Perez have been called into the steward's office for not following and slowing down for the double waved yellow. So I think this is mostly for the last lap incident between Kimi and Vettel, that there was a double yellow in sector 2, and then Vettel and Kimi was obviously summoned for their incident, and George Russell was also called in for moving under braking, which was a bit of a confusing thing, because the only time that could have happened was with his fight with Alonso, and Alonso did not complain on the radio, or we didn't hear about it. But yeah, that was a weird thing, and if there are penalties coming in anybody's way, we don't know what will be their updated race result, so we just have to wait and see what the actions will be taken on all of these. And I guess that's the end of this video. If you like this video, give this video a like, get subscribed to my channel and ring the bell icon to receive notifications on all of my future videos. Comment down below if I missed any interesting thing in this race weekend, and as always, stay home, stay safe. I'm gonna see you guys in the next one. Peace.